Yep. Give me a nod when you're ready.
Like
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Bullets and Bourbon. I'm Frank Gal, joined by my co-host, Matt Gunlock. Today's guest is Kenika Beck. He is stationed on Camp Lejeune, an 0629 radio chief by trade. I first met Kenika when he was a CMT at Weapons Training Battalion Stone Bay back in 2021. He was one of the staff responsible for facilitating the MIG at the time, and that's also the first time I met Matt. Shortly after, he joined the unit I was at, 2nd Intelligence Battalion. He became, one of the Marines there, and I started a little shooting team. We traveled around the Lejeune area, going to civilian matches, but the main point of it was to go compete at the MIG that was coming in March. Brought the team out there, and Kenika ended up coming out with the bronze. He came with me to championships, learned a lot, saw what championships and the marathon that it is. And most recently at MCMC East in 2024, he came away with 2 gold medals, one in pistol and one in rifle. So quite a span in terms of, from shooting on his own, just working on his carry gun, to shooting competitions to the point where he's now honestly, dominating one of the most competitive scenes within the MCMC regions. But at this point, is there anything I missed and anything you'd like to say about yourself, Kenika?
Not much. I mean, it was a very nice intro. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, it was when I first met you, it was I've been new to shooting, so to come away from that and like hit a unit and they're like, hey, let's start shooting competitively, that was awesome. But no, like that's a lot of my background, and I'm just excited to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah, and so am I. But let's start from the beginning, because if I remember correctly, you were a little bit of a skeptic from the beginning. Your first interaction, and this was a MIG that Matt was in charge of. He was the staff in CIC of the shooting team at the time. They came out to Lejeune, and it was turbulent, to say the least. MIG 2021, in MIG East 2021, there were some fundamental disagreements between the Marine Corps shooting team and the Weapons Training Battalion staff.
I will say that was the worst MIG I've ever had to administer.
And it was my first anyway. How would you say your perception of competitive shooting and also the Marine Corps team has changed since then?
I think first I would like to say there were faults on both sides, right? Let's acknowledge that.
Sure. Yeah.
I think my perception of it's definitely changed. So when I was working at Weapons Training Battalion and the shooting team came down, we had higher ups telling us like, hey, like this is still your range, right? Don't let you own this piece of the rock and don't let anybody take that piece of the rock from you. So I don't want to say we were set up to fail, but we were already set up to start butting heads, because the Marine Corps shooting team is unconventional to most. The way that MCMC is run is very unconventional to what Marines know. And at that time I knew nothing. So, we're getting told from our staff and COs, like, hey, like, don't get pushed around. Like, if I don't tell you it's okay, it's not okay. And then you have the Marine Corps shooting team coming in and being like, well, we want to do all this stuff. And then we've already been told to tell them no. And it's they want to run a good match and we want to own our piece of the rock and make a safe range. And that's where that butting head started to happen. But having been that was my introduction to competitive shooting, and I knew nothing. I was like, what are these beepers? What are these timers? Like, what are these people doing running around? Like, it seemed interesting, but I didn't really take much out of it. I didn't leave there like, what is this? Like, this is cool. I want to do it. And it wasn't until I got to Intel where I met Sam Nelson and you, that I got introduced to it. And from that, I started to realize like, oh, okay, like the Marine Corps shooting team is just trying to run a good match. They're not trying to like take our piece of the rock or do our jobs for us. Like, they're just trying to run their good match. And it's not my fault that the deviations didn't get put in on time. That was on the Marine Corps shooting team at the time, but
Um, I'm gonna butt in there and say that
oh
is
no,
not the case. You got your story, and I'm not trying to create discord here.
no, go
W-
for it.
We prior, because we knew Camp Lejeune was a new venue for us.
Yeah.
We had been having conversations with the staff down there at Stone Bay for months, like longer, like earlier than we normally would have had. Chris Scott, Captain Scott at the time, he had sent videos, he had sent write-ups, he had sent everything to Stone Bay saying, "Hey, this is the type of match that we run. This is a lot different than what you were normally than what you would normally see." And he sent the videos. Hey, here's the most recent MCMC that we held out in Hawaii. Here's the most recent MCMC we held out in Okinawa. We sent all this stuff in preparation because we knew Stone Bay had never done this type of stuff before. So I'm gonna say we had done our part in communicating everything that we needed in order to prepare.
Well, I know the one thing I like really remember from that was like the Marines had to wear flak and Kevlar, which I know really got one, and now looking back on it, really kind of destroyed what competitive shooting is supposed to be, because now you're working around all this stuff. And
Mhm.
hey, there's a time and a place to train in gear, and I absolutely support that. But competitive shooting is not normally that way. And the reason that we had first sergeants and stuff coming down to us and being like, hey, they didn't there's no deviation to the gunner or to whoever the G3 saying like, hey, we want a deviation saying we can move and shoot at the same time, because you need to submit one of those. And we were like, okay, and they're like, don't let them do it. And we were just like, okay, like I'll go tell this captain that he can't do this thing. And then now you have lance corporals just running around being like just snapping at the Marine Corps shooting team, and it's like it was this whole shebang. And I think we eventually got over it by the end of it. I know that there was a rifle shooter, man on the shorter stature, staff sergeant type. He's famous for
Oh,
that behind the shot back on Facebook.
yeah, Colliard.
Yeah, Colliard. And me and him were just the whole time. And by the time that finished, we were shaking hands and hanging out and like talking about it and being like, we're showing each other the memes we were making of each other by the end of it. Like we had come to an agreement and like kind of come to our senses by the end of it. But like, yeah, I think a lot of it was like our command being like, don't give them any ground, and you guys being like, we need this ground to run a good match. Um,
Yeah,
plus,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm not going to air any dirty laundry. I mean, there was a lot of fighting between us and the senior staff. There absolutely was. We knew from your perspective that what the pressures that you guys were being put under, and we also know how a lot of the times you guys kind of got mistreated by people. So, and I'm going to leave it at that. But I mean, we were like, hey, let's kill everyone with kindness. Let's just be professionals and let's work through this match. And like at first McGilton, him and
yeah.
I, like,
Hmm.
we saw eye to eye, but then there were times where we did not see eye to eye, and we still talk. We don't talk to this day like we're bros, but like we are still friends.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of that unit's introduction to competitive shooting.
Hmm.
And they were very like, like any safety bound thing in the Marine Corps, whether you're shooting guns or mortars or whatever it might be, like everybody gets real standoffish when you try to do something new.
Oh yeah,
And I think
and
that's a lot of it was like they were like, we don't know what this is. We don't this is not what we normally do. And they were just like they just didn't know, they kind of didn't know what to do. They were just at the time they were just like, well, like no, like I don't know this, and I don't know if this is safe, so no. And it kind of
yeah.
came down to that.
I mean, I will continue to say we sent everything in preparation prior to going down there months in advance. It and I will fully say this: it was at fault of the three shop not to do their homework, and actually open those emails and read them and watch the videos and see what it is the Marine Corps shooting team does. I will absolutely say that they are at fault for that, and they are at fault for not planning properly.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I like at the time I was just a sergeant running a range, but
Yeah.
looking back on it now with a wider perspective, like I'm definitely seeing that you know, one, you see issues with the Marine Corps unwilling to try new things, but
Mhm.
you also see like looking back on it, there was no need for a lot of that headbutting. You know what I mean? I think we could have gotten through all that and made both sides, you know, if not happy, content.
And I
You
will
know?
say this in your guys' defense. Um, our OIC of the team, Major Rich Martinez, somebody who
Yeah.
I will never speak his name again, he threw us to the fire, and he went and did stuff on his own that made your guys' command absolutely furious. And then he just picked up and left, and then me and Chris Scott had to, feel the fury after that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
much
remember.
so, so much so that like my sergeant major called and he was like, "Hey man, I hear things aren't going great down there. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "Hey, I got this, but this is what's going on, and this is how pissed off I am at this man right now. Like, he totally fucked us, but we're gonna work through the problems."
He was at East this year, and I remember seeing him and being like, are you allowed to be here? Like, are you allowed to be near the Marine Corps shooting team right now?"
I hate
But
that
it,
motherfucker.
but no, I was like, I've heard the story of him and the reloader and all the
Oh my
background that
God.
came out. But at the end of the day, like if I'm gonna answer your question, like the perspective has changed because I've realized one, how valuable of a training tool it is, and one, just how innocent and safe it can be. You know, like there's ways I've come across. I've run ranges with my unit and other units doing this stuff and going into offices and being like, hey sir, like this is what it is. It's not conventional, but it is an incredible training tool, and here's why. You know, as a sergeant on the range at the time, I didn't get that. Like no, like my command didn't come to me and say that. We were too busy butting heads with the actual members of the shooting team for either of us, for the shooting team to tell us how great of a training tool it is, or for us to listen.
Mhm.
So, but like looking back on it now, especially with competitive shooting eyes, it was them just trying to run a good match, and I think weapons training battalion freaking out because they had just never seen anything like it before.
Yeah,
It's
it
new
was.
training. It absolutely is something new.
Yeah, like they just like didn't know. They're just like, what is this? You want people to run around and like, what's the 180? Like, no, your target point is your
Hmm.
left and right, and it's like just I don't want to say abandoning those ideas, but like accepting that there's other ways and better ways to do things. You know, they were just like, I'm sorry, I haven't seen it. No, you know,
It's different, so it scares me.
yeah, it's different, so it's scary. You know,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that Matt was at that match. I was like, all right, cool.
He was in
You know,
charge. He planned that shit.
I'm sure you and I ran into each other at some point, and I was
We
like,
did.
no.
Well,
I
me and
was,
Chris Scott were running out there. We were going to the store and we are like, "Hey, we're gonna kill him with kindness. Like, we're gonna bring everybody, our team and their guys, Gatorades and stuff like that. Like, let's help everybody out."
I hope I didn't like angrily snatch it out of your hand and was like, thanks, and just
No,
walked away or something.
no.
Yeah, we didn't hate you guys. We weren't like trying to be mean. We were just following the orders that we got, and
Oh yeah.
it kind of boiled down to that.
Well, I mean, I remember day one. I vividly remember day one. Um, we were all ready to go hot, and
Hmm.
like the gunner that was in charge was like, "Nobody's going hot until I come by and check all the ranges." And he was just sat in his office, and everybody was sitting around waiting.
Waiting.
We go in there, and he's like, "I need to go check in each and every range," and we're just like, "Okay, we see how this is going." And then all of a sudden they said, "Hey, the base CG is or the base CO's coming out. Base CO's coming out." So immediately they just call over the radio, "Hey, make everybody hot and have them start doing the training." And we're
Well,
like,
it's funny because that wasn't even a rule during the day. Like other ranges would go hot without him, like
mhm,
routinely. So
mhm.
I think a lot of it was also like a power play. Like this is our
That
turf, and nobody's
well,
gonna.
that's exactly what it was because there was another the very next morning, we got called into the office and we were sat there waiting and we were like, "What's going on?" Then all of a sudden, all the staff, RSOs, OICs get called in, and right in front of us are like, these ranges don't belong to the shooting team; they belong to you. Like, made a big
Yeah,
deal about this, sent them off, and then like never even bothered talking to us. It was nothing but a power play.
yeah. But at the end, I mean, I like how this turned from a professional interview to like let's just like have a group therapy session about it. But like at the end of the day, like looking back on it now, I don't want to say like I'm ashamed of the way I was because I was at the day I was just a young sergeant following orders. But looking back on it now, I was like, these dudes are just trying to do a job. and knowing that like that's essentially the last McMick before championships,
Mm,
like
yeah.
how tired these guys are and how much they put into each match, even though they're constantly traveling and constantly dealing with new people and having to teach the same stuff. Like looking back at it now, I'm like these dudes were just tired and ready to run a good match and go shoot championships and then rest for a little bit before they start picking up again and doing summer shooters and whatnot. So it was looking back at it, I'm like, all right, cool. Like we shouldn't have acted that way, and that's why like I'm happy that our mutual friend Parker is there because he is a
Oh
godsend.
no,
Whenever,
that guy has turned that place around. Single,
absolutely,
I don't want to say single-handedly, but like from the
no, it's
face,
single-handedly, it's
yeah,
single-handedly.
yeah. Like he wants to see marksmanship, practical shooting within the Marine Corps excel.
Yeah, like him showing up there is like a godsend because
Hmm.
I'm sure if he wasn't there, a lot of the same stuff would happen. It'd be like, we don't know what this is, it's not safe. And to have somebody like him be like, no, 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 like this is what it is. This is the training value that it offers. This is how we're gonna keep it safe. Like this is what this means. And like shooting little matches beforehand and like bringing the command out, and being like, look, we just set up a stage on one of our ranges, and this is what it is. It's very regulated. It's very safe. Like he's made that place a mecca for people that want to just shoot guns.
Usually that's the trick. I think if you guys running the range back then had just tried action shooting, you probably would have seen it a lot differently. I think it's good that you guys had this conversation. I think it touches on something that's typically glossed over. The shooting team goes to all these different regions to hold MIGMICs, but there's so much prior planning. Sometimes things get lost in translation. And I think the synthesis between the shooting team and the range staff is so important towards what makes these MIGMICs work. And in some places, it's great. Like, I think, I always hear that Okinawa, that range staff is super accommodating. But in other places, like, especially if they haven't seen action shooting, it can be a point of contention. But, we talked about your first MIG, but I do want to talk about how you've progressed as a shooter. So when we first started shooting together, you were like super accurate. You had really good fundamentals. But really like you were being held back by conventional Marine Corps training methods, as we all were. Like we all have these training scars from the way that we were all taught to shoot rifle or pistol by the big Marine Corps. How are you assessing who you used to be as a shooter versus like who you are now? And we can talk about just the fundamentals for now. We'll talk about the mental game later, now that you've been competing for like 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, coming from, so I entered the sport with meeting Nelson in Intel. He's now a member of the shooting team. He's still a really good dude. I try to keep in touch with him every now and again. I'm terrible at it, so if he's listening, I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, I hit the unit and I'm in alphas and I walk in and he's like, hey, you like shooting guns? And I'm like, yeah, I love shooting guns. I shoot guns all the time. And he goes, you ever shot competition? And he will never let me forget that I said this to him. I went, no, I'm more into the tactical stuff. He will never let me forget that I ever said that. He brought it up at East, and I kind of shuddered a little bit, like, because my initial reaction was that those two things are like mutually exclusive, like they do not overlap. And to look back on it and be like, that is the most wrong thing you could think. So like I meet him and he introduces me to you, and I'm looking back on it now, and I'm like, okay, I was very in my ways, and I looked at competitive shooting as nothing more than a training tool to get better at the tactical side of shooting. That's all I looked at it as. I didn't think about competing. I wasn't like, oh, this is something I want to do as a sport. I was just like, oh, this is a good way to practice for my real goal of being tactical Timmy on a flat range, shooting at a target that's 5 yards away or whatever. But there was, have you ever seen that curve of knowledge and like
Yeah, the bell curve.
confidence? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like I hit competitive shooting at that high because I had learned the fundamentals, but there was so much more that I needed to know, but I didn't know it yet. So I hit it and I was like, I'm just the greatest alive. Like you don't, I'm surprised I didn't tell Nelson. I'm like, I'm the greatest shooter you've ever met in your life, right? But I think it was humbling. I think going out to my first match and like seeing where I place and being like, oh, like there's a lot to this that I don't know, and I am really not as good as I think I am. And then progressing through that, I've kind of moved down that bell curve and been like, okay, I, why are people moving this way? And then learning that and being like, oh, okay, well, this it just unlocked so much more. And looking back on it now, I think I was hesitant to get into competitive shooting because I didn't see the value until I started getting interested in it as a sport and not simply just a training aid to get better at concealed carry or something else. So when I got into it as a sport, it unlocked everything else. And that has all like having good mentors has been a big thing too. So like you, for example, you taught me all the fundamentals of competitive shooting. And I tell everybody that every day. I'm like, Frank Gao is the guy who got me into this. Like he is the guy. You taught me how to, like what a fault line is, like how to move, how to transition targets, all that, the fundamentals of it. And then from there, winning that first MCMC, it put me on a high. Once again, I kind of moved back up to that bell curve where I was like, I now know everything and I'm a master at this craft. And then get humbled again. And that has kind of been the progression of like thinking you're kind of there and then getting humbled again at like another local match or a national match or like an area 6 match or something like that, and then getting humbled and being like, oh, okay, like there's so much more to know. And then once again, knowing people like Tanner Wright, he humbles you every day. Shooting with people that are way better than you humbles you every day. You're like there, I have a lot to learn and there's a lot to get to. So I think looking back on it, I was like, I cringe because I was a little tactical Timmy. I was like, this competitive stuff isn't. It's, those old dudes that are like, competitive shooting is gonna get you killed, son.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
That
I
was
was
you.
in that. I was in that mode. Whereas like, what do you mean you're not taking cover, right? Like, if you had introduced me to IDPA, I'd still be that way today. Like I really would be. But
Very fair.
yeah, verified. But if
IDPK.
I think that was it. Yeah. I'd be shooting 48 AARP or 45 AARP right now and just be tactical Timmy on the range. But no, it's been a journey to start it and be like, oh, I suck. And
Yeah.
then start going and start getting mentors like you and Parker and now Tanner, who's teaching me a lot more. Like, to have these mentors in my life kind of guide me along this path and keep me humble every day. That's kind of been my progression through competitive shooting.
Yeah, I think everyone sees that when they first get into competition. I saw competition on my own when I was in California, and showing up, I was like, man, I'm straight up terrible. Like I'm near the bottom. And you either react one of two ways. You either do 180 and you just walk away and you just ignore that forever, or you embrace it. You embrace everything that it has to teach you. And it seems like you've done the latter.
Well, you see that especially in the Marine Corps. Because you get told you're first and foremost a rifleman, and then you get expert on the range, and you're like, I'm a goddamn expert with this rifle. Like
Dude.
I'm Carlos Hathcock on this thing. You know what I mean? Like, and then you see it. Marines go to their first match, and then they get humbled by some 16-year-old civilian dude who's just into it because he likes the sport, and they go one of two ways. Like you said, they either continue it and they're like, oh, I need to get better at this because I don't like getting stomped by 15-year-olds, right? Or they turn around and it's such a big ego hit that they find some excuse. They go, oh, well, it's not
Right.
what we do, or it's
They
not part of
devalue
it.
it. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, they have all this, they have nicer guns, they have nicer ammo. This isn't like realistic. I hear
yeah,
that a lot.
yeah. I hear that a
So
lot too. But
yeah.
like, yeah, you see it especially with Marines because we're naturally competitive. Like we
Mhm.
want to win, and to get humbled so hard after being told for sometimes 8-9 years on the range, like, damn, you're really good. Like you're just,
Yeah.
you're really good. And
Yeah.
then just
Yeah.
go.
You were a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was nuts to think that at some point I thought I was like good at this
Yeah.
sport.
It's funny because I think what your introduction when Sam first met you, and you were like, I'm more of a tactical guy. I think Sam reached out to me as like, hey, I met a guy. He was working on Stone Bay when we did that first McMic, and he's all into tactics. He's like, we're gonna get him. Like we're gonna
Get him.
we're gonna convert him. And
Yeah.
here you are. But the II MIG shooting team, which is a bit of a precursor to what you're on now, the installation shooting team, which has gone a whole lot further than we could have ever imagined when you and I were on the II MIG team. You guys place a lot of so back then we had two live ranges, but the preponderance of what we did is we showed up the armory during chow time and we dry fired. And we attended a lot of matches in our own time. Do you still see that as a formula for like introducing Marines into competitive shooting? Do you still place a huge amount of emphasis on dry fire for some of the newer or more unfamiliar members that join the installation team?
Absolutely. So the first thing you see when somebody like either so we got a kid on the team named Vogel, Lance Corporal type, and if he's listening, I'm sorry, but you initially showed up on the team because he was a tyro and we needed one, right? And then we started seeing him shoot, and we're like, okay, this kid's a blank slate, and we're like, well, we still want to win a team medal, and we still need you to perform somewhat, and kind of coaching him and teaching him. He showed up to the range like ready for it to be a Marine Corps range, and we went, hey, the ammo's there, the targets are here. We're gonna coach you up. If you have any questions, let us know. And like, he's like, wait, what? And I do that at ranges all the time. Like, I'll go to the commander and I'll pitch a range. And if he says yes, which generally he does because he cares, I do the same concept as the shooting team. They gave me the concept of an open bar. Like when you show up to the range, I'm very like, this is an adult range, right? We're not gonna do the whole like crazy Marine Corps stuff. We're still gonna be safe and we're still gonna keep this safe because at the end of the day, like I don't need any of you getting hurt. But I tell them, I'm like, here's a skill, like we're gonna work to it, and I'm gonna help train you to it. But at the end of the day, if you feel you need more time, the ammo's over there. Like you have the opportunity to go get more and come back. At no point am I gonna tell you to stop, unless we need to move on to something else. Of course, time constraints still exist, but
Mhm.
seeing that, and I think especially if you're introducing Marine Corps Marines to competitive shooting, like breaking that stereotype immediately and just being like, this is not ARQ, this is not CPP, like, and breaking that especially with like, hey, there's the ammo, it's big boy rules, right? I'm gonna tell you all to go clear, and I expect you all to go clear. Like I'm not looking down every single one of your barrels, especially if I have 50 shooters.
Mhm.
Like I expect you to go clear, right? And just having that level of respect, and they start going, oh, okay, like it takes that weight off of it, and it takes them out of the Marine Corps mindset and into like, let's get better and let's have fun while we're doing it. And then they go, well, uh, they go like, okay, well, like, do you do this out in town? I'm like, yeah, like it's the out in town, it's way more fun because now you're actually competing and meeting people and you're shooting your own guns and it's awesome. So like when we bring people onto the team, especially if they haven't shot in a while, but we see potential in them, or like they don't shoot competition, but we just see potential in them, breaking that stereotype immediately and getting them on there and just being like, here's the skills and this is what we do, and they're like, this is awesome, I get to come down here and shoot ammo that I didn't have to pay for with a gun that I don't own, like, and I don't really have to clean for another 2 weeks. Like this is awesome. And they get into it, and they come out with us as a team, and they're like, wait, you guys are doing this out in town? Like we're like, yeah, of course, come on out. They come out, and we're all just dudes hanging out, shooting guns, shooting a match. Like we introduce them to all the people we know out there, like Josh Haskell, Wesley, like all these dudes that are kind of staples in the competitive shooting space
Mhm.
around here that like everybody knows. And we're like, yeah, dude, we all go get food after this, and it not only does it build talent and interest in the sport, it builds a community around it. So when we bring people on, we break the Marine Corps stereotype immediately, and we start investing in them, and we start getting them out to where it's not just a sport, but it's also synonymous with like their friends and like doing stuff with their friends and hanging out. And I think that's the big driver. Is I can't tell you the last time I shot a match without anybody I knew.
Yeah.
Because it's a way for me to, even if I'm not enjoying shooting that day, it's a way for me to hang out with my
Yeah.
friends.
You're still with your buddies. Yeah. It's still,
Yeah.
still
So
beats a day in the office.
yeah, so bringing people onto the installation team, we scout the same way the Marine Corps shooting team does, right? We've called ourselves the shooting team light, right? And we're like, well, like we're at Mix too, thinking like, okay, like this dude's good. This guy's awesome. Let's bring him out. Let's see if he can shoot, and if he can, like, or even if he can't, like, if he has potential, let's get him out here and let's make
Mm.
him one of us and make him a friend and bring them out to all these things. So yeah, we
Yeah.
see that, we see them get interested in it, not necessarily because they're like USPSA is something I've always wanted to do, but because they think it's cool and they think we're cool, and they're like, plus the medals look cool, so they're like, all right, I want one of
They
those,
do. They certainly draw people's attention. Yeah, I think what you touched upon there is the change in culture and approach that the Marine Corps takes to training people with firearms. There's
Yes.
very much a kid gloves mentality that, you probably embodied when you were working on Stone Bay. And it's kind of by design, right? Like I think you told me at one point, like you literally had to look at the shooters as almost livestock. You just had to get them through the range. You had to do it safely. So you had to be, let's just say, a little authoritarian, right? But as soon as you loosen the reins a little bit, and because some people like that approach, it just makes them more nervous. And you don't want people nervous when they're shooting. You want them to be open-minded. You want them to explore new concepts. You want to give them a box of ammo and then see that light bulb go off, that aha moment, whether it's they're working on tension or trigger control or any of those other things. But it's great that you're bringing all these Marines out to competitions. Have you like encountered any, like you used to be a skeptic, have you encountered any skeptics, and how do you convert those types of personalities?
I absolutely have encountered skeptics because, just going out and meeting enough people, you'll encounter people who do the same thing I did, and they devalue it because it's not concealed carry training, it's not, tactical shooting, you're not taking cover. Um, and the way that I've found to break that stereotype is to one, bring them out to a match and humble them a little bit and be like, hey, like this skill set relates. At the end of the day, you're still shooting a gun, right? You're still shooting a pistol, right? You might not be drawing from concealment. You can if you want, but I bring them out and they get humbled a little bit. And they're like, oh, maybe I'm not as good. And I go, but hey, you can. Like, you can get better, and this sport will help you get better. And I've shot concealed carry with people who are skeptics, and I've been like, they're like, you're fast. And I'm like, well, the reason I'm fast is because I shoot competition. And they go, really? And I'm like, once again, I bring them out to matches, just getting them out there. And if they're still skeptics at the end of the day, it's hard to break that because they've shot it and they know what it is. And it's like, if they're willing to just shut off and be like, it's just I don't see the value. You can preach all day. You can sit there and be like, well, look at these guys and look at these guys. Look at this video of a competitive shooter in a self-defense scenario. Look at how good he is. But if they're not willing to accept it, then you got to learn when to be like, hey, this guy's not going to bite. Like, he's
Yeah.
just not going to get into it.
There's other
But
people out there who will take the bait and will want to get better.
oh, there's dudes out there who get there and they get hooked immediately. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I got out there and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I once again, I initially looked at it as like just a training aid, but like once I got past that, I was like, this is just fun. Like, I like doing this. This is something that I want to do aside from my normal concealed carry training, which of course still has a place. Like, you still need to train from concealment if you want to get good at that. And you still need to, if you want to train tactics out on your own time, you still need to kind of train to that as well. But I haven't found a better way to train for $25 for 4 hours on a Saturday. Because you go out shooting and you're like, you set these goals. You're like, I just want to get better. And you spend an hour and a half drawing from concealment. You're like, I'm bored. And you kind of just go, I'm bored. I don't know what to do next.
Hmm.
And then you get to competitive shooting and it's like, oh, each stage is different. I don't have to design them. And the scoring is all done for me. And you get out there and you're like, this is some stuff. So yeah, I still encounter skeptics, but generally by the time that they either get humbled or shown that it does have a relation to their end goal, they're generally either they're in it. You know what I mean? And then you have to deal with like some of these Marines, don't own firearms, and some of them maybe don't have money for a $500 Glock right now.
Mhm.
At that point, I find myself supporting a lot of Marines and being like, just pay for your match fee, and I will give you a gun, a holster, and ammo. Just pay for your match fee.
Nice.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot of them.
So you've attributed Frank with developing your fundamentals and Parker Tomasi with helping you with your mental game. And in the past, you were more likely to shoot matches just for fun. At what point would you say you developed the confidence as a competitor and start taking yourself seriously? And what advice would you give somebody with really strong mechanics but a developing mental game?
I think I started taking myself seriously about a year ago. I think I started shooting matches and a switch flipped, and I was like, I want to win. I want to be good. Like, I want to medal at every MCMC and medal at every intramurals and win these and do these. And once again, it became synonymous with my friends and talking stuff with your friends and being like, hey, like, oh, I did better than you and I did better than you. But uh, I think a switch flipped a year ago where I was like, I really care, and I think that was synonymous with me joining the Camp Lejeune team because now I had a name to uphold. I was like, oh, okay, like, I'm now a representative of a team that is encompassing all of the installation. So I should be really good at this. And I started being like, okay, well let's get down into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about, am I gonna put my foot an inch more left if I'm engaging this target? Um, and if I run into somebody with great fundamentals who's being held back by their mental game, it kind of depends on what part of their mental game. If I see that they're getting crippled by the idea of not winning, or if they're like, I just need to win, I just need to win, I just need to win. You know, I was on a pistol range the other day, and I think this is a great analogy. And there were these mass sergeants out there who haven't shot in like 6 years, and they're like, I should be getting 400, and they're all just really upset. And I was like, you haven't shot in 6 years. I'm not saying that like every Marine shouldn't strive for a 400 on the pistol range. What I'm saying is let's be realistic. You would, if you saw a young Marine who had never shot a pistol before, would you look at them and be like, you should be an expert on every weapon system and be a 400 shooter? No, you would expect that they're not, because they haven't shot a pistol before, right? So I think for the Marines that I see that have strong fundamentals and they go to their first match and they're struggling mentally, I think a realistic expectation, right? Have a realistic expectation of like what not only do you want to accomplish, but like where you're at, right? It helps kind of curve that slope of confidence, but at the same time, it's like it shows them it's like, okay, like I don't. It's not that I suck, it's that I just don't know. You know how to grip a pistol and that's great, but you just don't know. You don't know that, you need to engage targets depending on where you're going next. You don't know how to engage a stack of two, from the bottom to the top, right? So I find these Marines with great fundamentals that are holding themselves back mentally. I find that they generally get better after I tell them like it's not that you suck, it's just you don't know. You're new to this, and it's okay to be new to this, and we were all where you're at now, right? You have such an expectation of yourself that isn't backed up by, you haven't been doing this for 2 years. Your expectation shouldn't be that you come in first, right? Let's set an expectation that you come in the top 50% of
You
people.
kind of reminded me of whenever I was a young PFC back in like 2002, and I was going through security forces school, and it was my first time really ever handling a pistol in my life. Um, and one thing, like reflecting back then, I wouldn't say that the instructors were bad. They weren't bad, but they are only taught what they
We're taught.
get taught. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they have one way of doing things, and we all know there's many different ways of learning and many different ways of teaching in order for people to understand. And like whenever, back then it's like, hey, you're shooting one style of shooting. And back then, the type of targets you hit, they were bullseye targets, and you shot 10 minutes slow fire at 25 yards, and then you moved to like the 5, 7, and 15 yard line, and you were shooting at a bullseye target. And so, my confidence on pistol back then was just absolute shit, just because it didn't come easy to me. Like I always thought, like growing up and everything, most things came really easy to me. And then whenever I got into shooting, in the Marine Corps, you know, it did not come easy at all. And so it wasn't really until 2014, whenever 2013, whenever I first started shooting, I still sucked at shooting because all I knew was Marine Corps style shooting. But then as I started progressing through the competition game, when I got onto the team, that's when that's when everything really started to click. That's when I started to take myself seriously. And that's whenever I really started to put in the work. And, you know, then you develop that passion to teach people the same things that you learn, and in the aspects of the mindset as well.
Yeah, like a lot of it comes with like, oh, now I have a name to uphold.
Hmm.
I am a member of the Marine Corps shooting team. I need to like lock in. And you see that with Marines all the time. Like Marines first get their EGAs and they're like, I am now a representative of this institution. And some of them take it too far. Standing at parade rest for your Denny's server isn't necessarily right that. But I think at the end of the day, like people lock in when there's, I don't want to say something on the line, but when there's an expectation of them.
Hmm.
When it's like, so like if I had met you out of and you were like, I'm just not it. Right? I've met Marines that are like that are just, they're good at pretty much a lot of things they do. and then they get into shooting it, which is a very technical sport. And there's a
Mhm.
lot to understand that you're not going to get in your first 20, 30 matches, right? I tell Marines like that all the time. I'm like, well, welcome to being to the rest of us. Like, welcome to what it's like for the rest of us to do things. Like, I think bringing brevity and lightness into it is important because you see Marines all down in the dumps, or just anybody's down in the dumps, not even Marines, and you just walk up and you're like, hey, like you make a joke and you bring some lightness out of it, and you're like, yeah, maybe you don't have the confidence now, but like have some fun with it. Like, let's go learn some stuff and let's go do some stuff. So when I hit the Camp Lejeune team and I got access to ammo, guns, every once a week we're shooting. Like I had the access, I had a name to uphold. There was no excuse. There was no excuse for me to not try to improve. So I think for anybody that's like struggling with the mental aspect of it, I would say one, don't take yourself too seriously. At the end of the day, it's still a game. It's still a game. Like you're not gonna die if you don't medal. If you don't medal, like nothing happens. Like you're not gonna not get promoted, right? These things don't happen. You see people that act like that, and I think bringing some lightness into it and being like, hey, like at the end of the day, I'm here to have fun. Like that is what I'm doing. Like I'm here to have fun, and if this is no longer fun for me, then I need to adjust what I'm doing. Because the second this no longer becomes fun, then why am I spending $25 and $150 on ammo once a week to come do something I don't enjoy? So you gotta find something that's enjoyable.
And you bring up a very good point with that. Like, once it stops becoming fun, either you have to stop doing it because why are you doing it? Why are you putting that time, money, energy, and into it? Or you have to find a way to make it fun again, make a change, do something different. Like I experienced that recently, like this past year. I've shot in the same division for the past 10 years in 3-gun tactical optics. And realistically, the major reason I did that is because that is the one division that most closely resembles to what we do in the Marine Corps. Well, I'm not in the Marine Corps anymore, and I get sick and tired of quad loading a shotgun at this point. Um, you know, I'm getting older. I have gray hairs. My eyes aren't the greatest. I don't want to shoot iron sights anymore on a pistol. And I want to do things to advance myself and to have fun myself. So I like next week. Well, next week for us as we're recording this, April 6th
Yeah.
and 7th. I'm going to Battle for the South and I'm shooting in open division. Why? Because I just want to go fast, have fun, and not think too seriously on like where am I going to have to reload every single time. It's a matter of I wasn't having as much fun as I used to, so I need to switch things up in order to make that change to make it fun again.
Well, and making it fun and like having fun doing it, you'll see
Mhm.
yourself improve.
Mhm.
When I was going there and shooting matches and I was just stressed because I'm like, okay, well, if I don't perform, then I suck. Like once I equate the fun to shooting with the people I'm shooting with, even if I don't
Mhm.
know them.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you a stage design from MCMC East this year, but I can tell you the stuff me and my friends were talking about at these stages, like
Mhm.
just the friendly banter back and forth, and that's the stuff that I remember.
Yeah.
So and it takes your mind off of it. I mean,
Mm.
don't people get into like so locked into it, and it's like if you need to take a break, take a break. This sport isn't everything. And once you put it in the place that it is, which is just a fun thing to do on the weekend, right? You take that weight off of it and you're like, I'm gonna have fun because I this is fun. Like I'm not what are the real consequences of if me not winning?
Yeah, and
Like
it's like you hit it square on the head. The people you surround yourself make a huge difference with who you're going. How much fun are you going to have? And it can be detrimental if you get too lackadaisical and like pay
yeah.
attention more to just having fun rather than focusing on the task at hand. That is a very much something that can occur. But if you're around the right people, they're not going to let you get to that level and you're still going to have fun with those conversations. Like whenever I go, like the last major match I shot, which was Fall Brawl, like I had a great time. I didn't have the greatest performance, but I had a great time. uh, given the people that I surrounded myself with and the squad, the squad, like we were all there to help each other. And we were, if somebody needed something, like, here you go, take it. I don't need it
Yeah.
right now. This next weekend, it's very much made up of a lot of the same people with some new additions. But everybody on that squad is just like, they're great people.
Well, I would argue then you won the match.
Mhm.
Like if I go to a match and I come away having had fun, I'm telling myself I won. I might not be top, I might not be first or second or even third. I might have smacked a no shoot on every stage. But if I'm walking away with a smile on my face, then I've done the thing. I've done the sport. I have enjoyed myself doing something I enjoy. And I still find joy in getting better, and I still can get a little upset if I don't win or if I don't perform the way I know I can, which is the way I like to put it. Um, because I still have expectations of myself and I still want to be good, but I can't let that drive ruin it for me. I can't let I find my fun not in the bracket. My fun is somewhere else. My fun
Yeah.
is me shooting and me shooting with people I care about. If I don't win, hey, man, I'd rather be the guy who loses with a smile on his face than wins having had a terrible time.
Well, I'll
Title
tell
of
you.
that
Hmm?
title of the episode can be the real stage wins were the friends we made along the way.
Dude, honestly, like, fuck, man, if I had lost the Mick and I'd have just blown it, I'd have still had a great time. And like, we can talk about it all night long, but
Well,
it's
it's
still
like, I love being on the shooting team. I love being surrounded by those guys, but I'll tell you this, sometimes shooting with those guys, it was not that fun. Because we're all in our own heads, we're all preparing, we're all trying to perform to the best of our abilities. And like you said before, I have a name that I have to carry and represent, and I am expected to perform to a certain level. So, like, whenever it turns into that, like in for anybody who's thinking of joining the team, don't think I'm trying to detract, saying it's not a good time. It's a great time and it's a great place to be. It's some of the best people I ever served with in my entire career. But when you get to that level of performance, then it's not necessarily about how much fun you had. It's about how much you perform. Um, in what in make meeting that expectation. Um,
it becomes your job. Like that is
mhm,
literally your job is to shoot guns. And I
mhm.
don't care. I've met people who are like, I love shooting guns and I'll never get tired of it. I can give you enough ammo to where you'll get tired of shooting a pistol.
Oh yeah, like
Like,
after every summer, there were times where it's like I don't want to touch a gun for months, and there were times I didn't touch a gun for at least a month, just because when you're out on the range training every day for 8 hours, and you could easily expend 1,000 to 2,000, well, not 2,000, but 1,000 rounds in one day, no problem. And you're just solely focused, and by the end of the day, you're just mentally and physically exhausted. By the end of that 3, 4 months training in the summer season, you're not going to pick up a gun for a while.
yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying maybe not doesn't directly apply to people who like it's their job, like their
Hmm.
profession, right? Because I mean, hey, like you're not always gonna enjoy every day of your job. I know I don't. I don't know anybody who does, right? But if you're on the Marine Corps shooting team, it's because at some point you enjoyed competitive shooting,
Hmm.
and I understand the getting weared out and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like it's still it's your job then, but you still gotta enjoy it. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
can't don't ruin it. Like don't it's okay to take a break. It's
Hmm.
okay to take a month and be like, I just need time to like get back into it and like love it again.
Oh yeah. And I
Like
mean, the way I operate now is I have nothing but fun now. Like this past weekend, I went out to the range with a buddy of mine, Noah, and it's like, hey, what do you want to train? Well, let's shoot some 22 first, get those guns going. And then let's switch over to our 5.56, get the data we need and, shooting everywhere from 100 yards out to 700 yards. And then, hey, let's switch over to pistol and shotgun and just, tune the skills up. And then, this weekend, I'm probably going to go do the same thing.
yeah. I've definitely started listening to myself, and I think every good competitive shooter does, where they go, nobody forces me to shoot matches. If I don't want to go, I don't.
Hmm.
If I'm like I'm just not feeling it this weekend, or I'm just I've been training all week. I need a break. Like, I just don't go. And I think every good competitive shooter, anybody in any sport, starts listening to themselves, right? When you're training all day and you're like, I'm just pulling a trigger, like listening to yourself and being like, well, then put the gun down. Then put the gun down and go take a break. Go away. Maybe come back to it tomorrow. Like, that aspect of it is important. You can't once you hit that point, it's the law of diminishing returns. You're not going to get anything out of it. So put it down, because that's how
Mhm.
you burn yourself out.
Yep. So kind of moving along, like you went back to East this year,
Yeah.
and it was a much different experience. You know, you've been to East a couple times now, but you put together a very impressive performance. You finished second gold in pistol and third gold in rifle. And traditionally, East has always been one of the most competitive regions with security forces and the Lejeune shooting team in attendance. What was your preparation like leading up to the match, and how did you leverage your mental game to your advantage?
So, contrary to everything I just said, I shot a lot of ammo. I shot ammo to the point where I was bored, and I didn't enjoy it. But preparation, I got it. Once again, big shout out to Weapons Training Battalion, and especially Parker Tomasi over there, who set us up for success. He gave us all the resources we had to be great. So in February, every Friday, we shot. I went down there at 12 and we shot till the sun went down, just training. And then the same thing in March. It was every Thursday and Friday we shot. We put so many rounds to those M18s. I'm surprised the barrels aren't shot out. But we can only go so far with that. So it was a lot of training the like physical aspect of shooting, the like, where do you put your foot, right? Where do you put your sights on the target? Like, do you need to acquire your sights? All that good stuff. But it wasn't until Parker gave me this book with Winning in Mind by Lanny Bassam that I started taking the mental aspect of it very seriously. And I started like really caring about how I think and how I act at a match. And that realization hit me at intramurals when I was first on the practice day by like 10%. And I was like just like killing it. And that seeing that and looking at my score and like that pressure got to me. And all I could think about that next day was like, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, don't screw it up. And what did I do? I screwed it up. Right? So the mental aspect of it is, I think, the reason for my performance. I think I had the same skill, if not close to it, I would say 6 months prior. But it wasn't until I started, once again, not taking it so seriously. Not taking as if this is something that's going on my fit rep. Right? Like, once I started enjoying it and once I started thinking like I read this book and I was like, okay, I need to work on a few things mentally to unlock the potential that I've already trained. So leveraging the mental aspect of it was a lot of that. It was reading this book. It was every day I showed up to the range, I was like, it. My buddy Kyle Turpak says it best. He goes, it's just another practice day. He's like, it's just another day to just practice and have a good time. It's not the end of the world. And at the end of the day, I showed up and I was like, hey, I'm gonna shoot consistently. I'm gonna shoot. Parker says best. He goes, I'm gonna shoot my match. He goes, I'm not gonna show up and go faster than I know I can go, or go so slow that I'm gonna shoot my match. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna shoot consistently. I'm gonna shoot the way that I know how to shoot. And hey, if I throw a mic or I throw a no shoot, it's not the end of the world. I'm not gonna carry that with me into the next stage. And that was a big part of it, because I threw a mic on action rifle on day 2, and I could feel that urge coming back up. Well, it's over. It's all over. Like, there's no point anymore. And just bringing that mic with me to the next stage. And I remembered the words of all my buddies and being like, it's just a mic. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the stage. Don't carry it with you, right? Shoot consistently. That one mic doesn't make you not consistent. You're like, just shoot consistently was the one thing that I remember. Um, and just shoot your match. Like, don't go in there and be like, yesterday I was FUD Lord McGee, but today I'm JJ Rakaza. It's like, no, you're not. Right? Just shoot your match and have a good time. And going into it, I was like, I'm gonna take it seriously because I care about the sport and I want to do good, but I didn't walk up to each stage and being like, if I don't 100% this stage, it's the end of the world. Right?
So
This
I'll
is very
say,
wrong.
getting your first, like to me, I think getting your first medal is one of the hardest ones to get because you put a lot of expectations on yourself. And I remember the first MCMC I ever shot didn't medal. Like I was running, I was planning on finishing like eighth in the match overall. And this was whenever it wasn't East. It was when East was up in the National Capital Region. Prior to East being down in Lejeune, we did it up here at Quantico, and I was slated to finish eighth place. Last stage, like one of my last stages, completely fucked it up. I gripped too high on the Beretta, and it just caused to go into slide lock almost every shot, and it really, like, it messed me up. So I went into the next MIC the following year out in Okinawa, where I had a first place stage finish. I had like a top 10 stage finish as well, and then the next day we had one more stage to shoot for pistol, and I was like, can't fuck this up, can't fuck this up. It was raining, worst conditions ever. Glasses were fogging up, everything. What happens? I fuck it up. I have a 36th place stage finish, and I'm just like, well, and I was one of the first shooters in the morning, and there was a whole day worth of shooters.
Try having the last name Beck. B. You are always the first shooter.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I ended up coming, I want to say 10th place out of 156 out of that whole match. The one thing that saved me is that first place stage finish. Like I know for a fact coming in first allowed me to get that medal. But like that was one of the most memorable experiences, but one of the hardest in mentally grueling experiences once I knew I screwed that last stage up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the practice score right now, and 11th, 11th, 9th, 8th, none of these are top 10 finishes except for the last two, and
Mhm.
barely an 8th and a 9th, right? But I was like, shoot my match, shoot consistently, like just don't freak
Don't
out
fuck it
about it,
up.
don't fuck it up, right? And the positive, we got on a trend on the team where it's like you got to have a positive mental outlook. The second somebody starts like degrading themselves and being like, I suck, like we all get on each other about it. We're like,
Mhm.
hey, are you really saying that? And you're like, oh, I know I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't say that. I know. Okay, I'll stop. And it's like getting on each other about like just stop telling yourself you suck. Because if you continue to tell yourself you suck, then you will suck.
We sometimes, like, in the moment, start to maneuver away from that person if we're in a match environment.
Oh yeah,
That way they can just get through their get stay in their own head, or get out of their head on their own. A
you can
match,
self-destruct away from me.
yes,
You can self-destruct over there.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, okay. See if I have the book. There's a quote. It's from Henry Ford, and it's right here. I highlighted it because it's that important to me. He goes, if you don't think you can be successful, you won't be. Henry Ford said it best. If you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Hmm.
Like the second you start telling yourself, don't hit the no shoot, don't hit the no shoot, don't hit the no shoot. What are you thinking about? The no shoot.
Hmm.
You're thinking about hitting the no shoot, right? So when I'm talking about like I'm just gonna shoot consistently, right? I'm not thinking about a no shoot. I'm not thinking about mics. I'm like, oh, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. I'm just thinking, just shoot consistently, shoot my match, right? I'm not going in there with any lofty expectations that I'm gonna come first, which was easy because Tanner and McSherry were there, so I didn't have to worry about coming first or second, which was nice. But showing up and just being consistent and not like you said, you think don't fuck up, don't fuck up, don't fuck up, and what do? You fuck up,
Yep.
right? Like that's a revelation everybody has at some point. And I mean, some people don't, and they still succeed, which boggles my mind. But we have a buddy, God, Revo shooter. We're just talking about Ben.
Ben
Ben
Fouls.
Faust, yeah.
Ben will talk crap about himself while he's shooting a stage. He'll shoot and be like, "Well, that was fucking shit," and like keep going, right? And he's an amazing Revo shooter, right? But at the end of the day, like that negative mental outlook, yeah, I can see it on his face when I was shooting with him. Like he's putting a lot of stress And there's a lot of just like stress in his shooting because he's so self-critical. And there's time for self-criticality where you're like, I should have done this or I should have done this, right? But you still have 6 other stages to run. Worry about those. Like worry about the process. Show up to the stage and be like, what do I need to do? Okay, I need to walk this stage. All right, I walk the stage. I just need to rehearse it in my head. And then once you shoot it, you're like, all right, I just need to shoot it the way I rehearsed it. And then you erase that stage from your mind and you go, it's over. It's done. I shot my stage. Whatever happened, happened. I have another stage to shoot. Like I have other stuff to continue doing. So that negative self-talk is something like we get on each other about. Out in town,
Mhm.
like you'll see us, we'll just be like, what'd you just say about yourself? And you'll be like, ah, I'm sorry, it's habit. And they're like, yeah, don't let it happen again. You know, like having that community of being like, hey, you're fine. Don't talk shit about yourself. You'll be okay. Like that's important. So like I think if we're gonna talk about the mental aspect of shooting, it's all about how you treat
Self-confidence.
yourself. It's self-confidence. Like that's what it is. It's your self-image. It's like too much confidence can be bad, and too little confidence can be bad. You gotta just, like I said, have
You
a
have to find the
reasonable,
balance.
yeah, have a reasonable expectation, right? I'm not going into matches like I'm JJ Rakaza, right? But I'm also not going into matches like I suck. I know my abilities and I know how I shoot, and I'm there to shoot the way I shoot, and it seems to work out so far. So this book and these mental management classes seem to be helping, but I'm not. Don't go into it and be like I'm the greatest alive, or don't go into it and be like I suck. Because if you think you're the greatest alive, you're not, and if you think you suck, you will suck. Like that's how it is.
So moving along, we're about to roll into championships, what, next week?
Yeah, the first is when we show up.
Yeah, Monday. Well, for those who are listening, championships have already ended.
And
uh,
you will see me crying or praising myself on Instagram. One of the two will happen. I will have deleted all my social media and become a hermit, or I will be like, hell yeah, I did it. You know?
but for those who do and don't know, championships is a whole different ball game in terms of the Marine Corps, because like, so you have the top 10% from each region, Pendleton, or West as we call it, Hawaii, Okinawa, East, NCR, the top 10% of the Marine Corps who shot those matches showing up. And you shot championships in 2022, and now you're coming back off a strong MIG performance. There's a personal and collective expectations to perform. How are you handling the lead up to championships?
Uh, God, that's good. So I can feel myself getting nervous because I have 24 pistol points. If I medal at all, I distinguish.
Mm-hmm.
And that I feel it every day, at least once a day. The nervousness of it, the pressure. I start putting it on myself. And of course, leading up to championships, I'm dry firing. I'm doing the same thing that me and Frank used to do. I'm at the armory. I'm putting stuff on the walls over there, and I'm dry firing because I still need to train. But a lot of it is like every day when I get that feeling of like, oh my God, what if I don't? Like, you need to not suck. You need to be great. Like, I find myself calming myself down and being like, it's just another match. Like it is, I will have other opportunities to distinguish. Like this is not the be all end all of this sport for me. And so, yeah, there's expectations from the guys that I shoot with because they know that I can, and I know that I can. That self expectation. Um, I think the only time in a sport you should get upset is when you know you could have done better, and that's really it. Like if other people can tell me like you need to be first and we expect you to be first, I'm not listening to those people. I'm listening to myself and I'm going, I know my talent. I know that I'm not the greatest shooter in the Marine Corps, and I won't be at championships. I can almost guarantee it, right? But that's not self-deprecating. That's just realistic. Like I'm not. I haven't put in the amount of time that a lot of these guys have. A lot of these guys they have like 8 9 years doing this. I've been doing this for 2 years, so it's not realistic for me to go up there and be like I need to be first. I'm going to be first. My goal is to medal. My goal is to medal and distinguish in pistol, and then I got to work on rifle. But I'm trying to not let that expectation cripple me. I'm trying to not let that expectation become the reason I don't medal.
Well, I think the most important thing is you can't become necessarily results focused because you don't know everybody that's going to be there, and you don't know how hard they've been working. You don't know what their capabilities are. You only know what your capabilities are, and so you have to be able to um, objectively prep yourself with what you know what you're capable of. And I think that's the best attitude like that you can go in with.
Yeah, I mean, I know dudes who are going up there and they're like, if I don't do great, then I suck. It's like, dude, you're at championships, man. Like
You're the
you've already
top
proven,
10% of your region.
yeah, like you're good enough to be here. Like I said, I find myself getting really nervous because I'm like, well, I have such a medal on the line, distinguishing. I mean, it doesn't get higher than that for pistol. Like it's really that. Like that is the end of the bracket, if you will, for points and all that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and I have a lot of people that expect great things. My fiance is one of them. I mean, every time I come back and one of my friends beat me, she goes, "Why'd you let that happen?" She knows that I'm good, and she knows that I can perform. I need to get out of my own way. I worry that I'm gonna get up there and we got a hotel room because we could, and I'm worried that the day of the match I'm gonna wake up and just be super nervous and just show up and blow it, right?
Well,
So
I think the nervousness is important. You know, when you stop becoming nervous at matches, I'm not saying you don't care as much, but the nervousness tells you that you care and that you have this realistic expectation of your abilities to perform.
yeah,
And that's how I always felt like my first stage of every match. It's usually my best stage, but it's usually the stage where I am the most nervous. Like I'm borderline shaking. Like,
yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. Like I show up to a match and my last name is Beck, so I'm generally the first person. So I'm the first person to shoot the first stage in the morning, and it's always nerve wracking. But learning to not let that fear like cripple you, or that nervousness be the reason you don't medal, or
mhm.
don't compete the way you want. You got to get out of your own way, and I'm trying to do that. Like I still find myself being like, because there's a lot on the line. Like for me anyway, like there's a distinguished medal on the line. There's a distinguished badge. I'm sorry, on the line, right? Right. And that pressure that I'm putting on myself. You asked like, what are the personal and collective expectations? Collectively, I think the expectation is that I go up there and I shoot the way I shoot and I have a good time. But personally, I find myself putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I'm trying my best to be like, it's not the end of the world. It is
Mhm.
just another match. And before we started this, I thought it was 6 stages. Finds out it's a lot more. So I'm excited to get up there and shoot it. And there's a lot of things that go into that. It's like there's a lot of chances for me to mess up. But if I go into there with the same mindset that I went into East with it's my buddy telling me it's just another practice stage.
Well,
Me showing up.
you shot the Carolina Classic, right?
No, I didn't make it down to Carolina Classic.
Hey, have you shot any of the bigger majors or any majors?
No, not really. I've shot a lot of level ones, and that's really it. I haven't shot a major
You've
ever.
shot Sir Walter, which out of local batches probably comes closest to approximating the length of a major.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say Sir Walter's a good length of a major, but I've never shot like an official level 2 match. I've
So
shot
I
things
mean,
that are the same length and complexity, but I've never
so,
shot like an official level 2 match.
so the way I would look at it is you're going to shoot a good match. You're going to shoot a very fundamentally, I don't want to say basic because like they still put on challenging stages, but the complexity of the stages are not going to be anything that you haven't seen. And the amount of time that you're outside shooting is going to be it's not going to be any different than what you're already used to.
Yeah, I mean, I've told all my buddies, like from my experience, it's a marathon, not a race.
Hmm.
Like it's a week and some change of just shooting guns and competing every day.
Yeah.
Like so when you get up there, you cannot let's say I blow pistol. Okay, I blow pistol. I still have the opportunity to get rifle points there. Like I don't want to blow it for myself. So learning to get out of my own way is the thing. Like the thing that's gonna like let me win or help me win is like showing up and just being cool, calm, collected, having a good time. like meeting new people and focusing on more of that. I'm still gonna be nervous because of course, I mean I still want to perform, as you said. I totally agree. But like if I go up there and I meet some new people and I have a good time, I've won my match. I've won my match. And I think that's the way I've been shooting recently is setting a goal that isn't winning. Whether it's going to a match and being like, I just want to shoot this consistently, or going to a match and be like, I want to speed up and see how I do, or going to a match and being like, I just want to have a good time. Like setting a goal that isn't winning has helped me because I just show up and I'm like, if I don't win, it wasn't my goal. I'm attaining my goal.
So I think one thing you'll enjoy is in you probably you won shot championships last year, right?
2 years ago,
2 years
2022.
ago. Um, so this year, you know, you're going to kind of experience what Frank experienced back in 2021, you know, an all action format. Um, my first championship experience, it was a 3 week format. Cha-
That sounds incredibly stressful and tiring. At
Oh,
the end of that, I'd probably be like, get me out of here.
yes. It was a week long of practice of bullseye rifle and pistol, followed by and that was just training for it, and then a week long of competition on rifle and pistol for bullseye, and then 3 days, it was 3 days of um action, which was at the time just 3 gun, followed by team matches, and then the last day was the award ceremony. It was incredibly grueling logistically and mentally. But these formats, like the all action formats, it's kind of where it's at, and you know, people learn to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited as hell about it because when I went there with Frank, they were doing bullseye pistol with M18s, and I don't want to say I felt cheated because I'm shooting with a sight as that's bigger than the target I'm shooting at, but
Mhm.
I felt like I went up there and we were still shooting some bullseye stuff, and I had a great time. But my drive is the action stuff. That's what I love, and that's where the competitive shooting industry is going. I'm
Mhm.
not saying bullseye isn't relevant. I'm not saying bullseye pistol isn't relevant, but what are you seeing on social media? What are you seeing people when they get into competitive sports? What are they doing? They're shooting action sports because it's more fun. It's more. Oh, I would argue it's more fun. I'm not trying to talk any way about bullseye, but I would argue it's what people think when they think competitive shooting. They think, all right, let's run around and shoot pistols and rifles and have a great time. Whether it's action rifle, gas gun, PRS. Like I'm
Well, it's
excited to
like,
go up there.
well, think about it like this: whenever you join the Marine Corps and you were like, oh, I'm gonna be able to go out and shoot guns and this and that, and you know, prepare for combat. Like the style of shooting you think of is the style where you're like, you know, uh, shooting fast, shooting accurate, hitting long range. You know, the stuff that we're doing now.
Yeah,
It's not the slow, methodical bullseye style that
and don't
we.
get me like that to teach fundamentals. There's a reason ARQ is still taught in boot camp and OCS
Mhm.
because it's a great way to teach fundamentals. There's no better way to there's no better way to see your fundamentals than on the target.
Mhm.
So there's still a place, but you, when people get into the MCMC, they're not there for. I find them when I'm talking to them. I'm asking like, "What are you excited about? What do you want to do?" And he's like, "I'm really excited for action rifle. I want to run around. I'm excited for action pistol. I'm excited for gas gun because I'm moving positions, right? I mean, it's where it's all going. It's where the competitive industry is going. It's where shooters are going, right? Like, there's still a place for it, and it's still a cool sport. But I think this all action format is going to give people that even if they don't perform the way they want, they're still going to have a great time, and they're still going to show up and be like, that was awesome. And they're going to tell their friends about it, which then grows the sport, and it grows, make attendance, which I'm sure the shooting team guys are pulling their hair at. They're like, I don't want 400 people, please.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, they're like, if it grows the sport, that's the point. People are going to show up and they're going to have a good time. It's not so long that you just can't handle it, but it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. Like you're gonna see Marines and maybe Marines that fucking did great at the MCMC just lose it. Like 4 stages and 10 stages are very different things.
Mhm.
So you're gonna see people that carry those no shoots with them, and you're gonna see people who tire out and they're just like, I can't do it. Like I'm so done today. And those last couple stages they just blow it. So like,
Another thing you learn is you figure out who's mentally weak and who's mentally strong.
Yeah.
And who wants to continue and who wants to develop.
well, that's where I think the fun is. Like, that's where I think like bringing it some levity into it and like having fun with it is important, because if you're just so stressed out, you're gonna tire out by stage 3 or 4,
Mhm.
right? But if you're having a good time, irregardless of how you're shooting, you're gonna make it to the end. Like you're gonna finish out and not be just, oh my god, I hate my life. You know, you're gonna have a good time and still tell you're gonna go back and be like, listen, I didn't do the best, but it was a freaking blast. You know, and people like me that have expectations of themselves and have been doing this a while are gonna go into it with a little bit more. We're gonna go into it with like an expectation that we do perform, but at the same time not hinder ourselves with that expectation. Like I have my competition is against the guys I'm shooting with. My competition is against my guys. Like I'm not competing with I don't want to sound like I'm dishing on anybody, because everybody who medaled obviously put work in to do that. But the people I'm competing against are like Kyle Turpak, Tanner, McSherry, you, Frank Gal. Like I'm competing against you guys and with you guys. Like I'm not over there freaking out about the last bronze from Hawaii. Like my competition is with you guys, and that's where I'm having the fun, and that's where I'm enjoying it. Competing with you guys and talking shit and just being like, hey Frank, how'd you do on that last match? Oh well, I hit some. It's like, yeah, it is what it is, but I didn't. You know what I mean? And just talking shit and having a good time, and me and him are gonna bullshit and a little friendly banter, but have a good time with it. I think that's, once again, I think the biggest thing that has helped me in competitive shooting is just having fun and going back to the root of like, I'm here to have a good time. And if I'm not having a good time, then I'm doing something wrong. So if I go up there and I put all that stress on myself and I go, I need to be the greatest alive, or I need to medal, I'm setting myself up for a very hard fall if I don't. But if I go up there with, I want to medal and I can medal and I have the ability to medal, but my goal to have a good time, then it's not so much of a fall, and that frees me up to perform the way I know I can perform. And don't get me wrong, I still have a buttload of work to do. Like I'm not in any way the greatest alive. Like I shoot against people every day who are way better than I am, so I still have a lot to learn. But I know I can. I know I can go to championships and medal. I know I have that in me. It's just getting out of my own way and setting a goal that isn't a medal and keeping my mind off of it. Like I'm happy. I think I looked at the schedule and it's like that we show up and then we just zero the next day, and then I think pistol is like one day or something like that, isn't it?
Well, there's the pistol match, the heritage match, and then multi-gun. Those
Yeah.
are all separate days, but yeah.
But the pistol match that you're gonna be in I don't know if, are they mixing stuff this year where it's like the
Yeah,
heritage match and USPSA are like together?
I want to say the heritage match counts towards pistol points. Multi-gun is its own thing, just like when we shot it. And then rifle is going to be an aggregate of the night stages, the gas gun stuff, and also I think some action rifle.
I still have no idea what a heritage match is. So
So
what is it?
yeah. So last year, there was a stage in which you shot in 1911 with 45 ACP. You had to do at least 2 reloads, and then you shot an M1 Grant at like long range steel targets. So, not saying that's what it's gonna be, but the
Yeah.
intent is to
Obviously
bring.
we're not spilling secrets here.
Yeah,
Well, this is coming out after the fact.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
So that's for one thing, and also like
but competitive equity, I don't want to know anything that
No,
would,
I couldn't give you any specifics because they're not, I'm a competitor, like they're not telling me anything. What I
Yeah.
do know is there's gonna be stage guns, right? There's gonna be a 1911 at some point, so, and then, there's gonna be a little physicality. So these stages are not your typical USPSA stages, there's gonna be a little bit of, a little more running around, carrying things, that kind of stuff. But they're basically tailored in a way to like pay homage to those who sacrificed before us and the things that they did in order to emerge victorious in
Well,
previous
that's
conflicts.
absolutely awesome. Like I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that USPSA is one day, because it forces me. It doesn't give me the opportunity to look at my score halfway through the match.
Oh, you
Yeah.
won't. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not doing live scoring, so
Yeah. Well, no, like
yeah. I know what you mean though. Like at the
yeah.
MIG, it's a 2-day format,
Yeah.
and yeah, like when the 2 MIG team shot it, we did like one We did that god awful stage at Dodge City,
Yeah.
and then
I
we
remember
shot
that.
on the rifle range, and then the entire like next day we just had the remaining pistol stages hanging over our heads. I do remember that.
Yeah, like that. It's almost like I wish I could, but I'm glad I can't.
Yeah.
Like I wish I could look at my live scoring and like see my scores as they go up, but I'm glad I can. Like I'm really glad I can.
The only time that live scoring helps you is when you're in contention for like the very top.
Yeah. Well, I mean
Like,
that's
yeah.
they did that at Carolina Classic. I think they did this year. This live scoring.
Well, a lot of major matches have. We do it at Quantico too. I have a
Yeah.
little Wi-Fi puck that travels with me, and as I like walk around the bays, it basically tethers to the scoring tablets and pushes out the scores. And you get a little email with your hit factor and your raw time. Sometimes your splits if we have like an AMG commander that links up to the tablet. So, I mean, that's kind of become the expectation. Uh, but I really don't look at it. Like I
Yeah.
don't like there's sometimes I'll look at it just to be like just to kind of quantify what actually happened that stage and like rehearse a little bit in my head. But otherwise, no, out of sight, out of mind. Like the one time I score hawked, it fucked me so hard.
Yeah, I mean that happened at McMick this year. I wasn't gonna look at it and I did, and the only reason I did was to make sure everything was entered correctly. Because they have
Yeah,
that like an hour after everybody leaves where
yeah,
you
the arbitration.
can
Yeah,
test, yeah.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I was like, I don't want to look at it, but at the end of the day, I do want to make sure everything is inputted correctly. I'm not saying that, of course I have full faith and confidence, but just double check it, double tap it, make sure everything's in there right. And then once I saw that, I immediately put it down and I didn't talk to anybody about it. I wasn't talking to my buddies about, oh, like what do you have to do
Yes.
tomorrow? I was just okay, everything's in there.
Yeah.
Time to go play some video games or something to get my mind off of it.
Yeah,
And
having the discipline to not do the deep dive and let it like dominate your mental space is huge.
that's it. It's just like dominance over your own mind. I think
Yeah.
that could be like the running theme of this episode. Is just like don't let your mind dominate you. You need to like dominate
Yeah.
your mind. Like you cannot let your mind be the like just get in your way.
Yeah.
You have to sometimes tell it like, hey, it's calm down. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. So I'm excited to shoot championships. I'm excited to see you again and say hi and like hopefully we're in the same squad and we can shoot together. I'd love that. I don't know how they're doing squatting this year or if like they're gonna put East with East or whatnot, but
Yeah, NCR is small, so we'll see, man. But we'll definitely run into each other. I think it's going to be a great match. Unfortunately, we'll talk more about this after, but I can't shoot the whole thing. I just have a lot going on, so I'm going to be very selective about the days I'm participating. But you will see me around.
hell yeah, I'm excited, man. It's gonna be awesome, and I'm excited to get up there and have a good time. I'm excited to have a good time. And if
Absolutely.
I medal, great. If I don't, hey, it is what it is. We can't win them all, right?
Yeah,
It's kind of
absolutely.
my thing.
So, Kenika, we really appreciate you coming on. This was a really good
Group
episode,
therapy session.
cathartic at times. uh, airing dirty laundry out and working through the past. But no,
Getting over some trauma.
yes. But we really do appreciate you coming on. I think this was overall just a really good episode, really talking about that mental game, really talking about through the processes and really just highlighting achievements and travesties at the mix and everything you can expect and then moving into how to maneuver the mental space of championships. So again, thank you. We really appreciate that. And to our listeners, we really hope you enjoyed this. Please give us feedback. Let us know what you think. If you want to reach out to Kenika, talk about getting onto the Camp Lejeune shooting team and learning more about that, let us know. We'll get you in contact with him. Other than that, let us know how we're doing. Please leave us a review. Give us 5 stars if you feel like it. And have a good one. And we'll talk to you the next time.